Okay, your hostess to the world of STEM, and today I'm here with Miss McAllister, who is the founder of STEMBox. So, first,
Yeah.
I just wanted to start with your educational background. So, could you talk about if STEM had any effect on that, and if so, how did you become exposed to STEM?
I started my interest in STEM probably when I was 8 or 7 and actually started paying attention to that interest. And like my most like the starkest memory I have of it is when I was like in love with getting a microscope, and so I would bug my parents like for weeks before Christmas and say I want a microscope this year, and they finally got it for me. And literally like the whole next year was spent just like finding anything and everything that I could fit under the scope, including like this was a terrible thing. I don't know where my parents were, but like pricking my brother and sister's fingers and mine for blood, like putting it under a slide. And so that's how it started, I think, for me. And it was something that was like my most prized possession. And I went through, like the normal K through 12
Yeah.
experience of like, you go in and then you start to feel like, oh, like girls don't normally, like it's just kind of a feeling
Yeah.
you get. You're like, oh, like girls don't really go into like math and physics or engineering. So in like, I think in middle school, that's when I started to feel that kind of influence, and I didn't really challenge it because I didn't really know any better. And then in high school, I started to really fall back more into my science groove and be like, oh, like self-aware and not so socially aware. And so when I went to college, I decided I was going to major in psychology because I was like, I've never been great at math and it's really hard in physics and engineering. And I just like talked myself into this, even though I'd gotten pretty good grades and I'd done like AP calculus in high school, like IB classes for chemistry, but I still talked myself into thinking I wasn't very good at like those things. So I didn't really see myself pursuing like a hard science at college. And then after my first year in school, I'd gone through like the first couple of like introductory courses, and then something changed for me when I realized that I am actually pretty good at those things, and I've been like myself or something weird. So at like the week before my second year of college started, I actually like switched my major. I bought all my books, I had enrolled in all my classes, and I changed everything because I was like, you know what? Now I'm gonna go and like do some form of a biochemistry degree because that's what I'm interested in. And so I finished college with a general science degree. So it's a Bachelor of Science in General Science, which is nice because in the general science degree for me, it was cool because I knew what kind of research I wanted to do. I wanted to do microbiology, pharmacology. And so I got to cherry pick some of the classes that were a good fit for me. And so that led to a focus in chemistry and biology. And so, yeah, like I'd say that's, and so it was in my like junior year of college that I thought I wanted to go into research. So I started looking around my school for, just volunteer positions in labs, and it was a Jesuit school. So there wasn't as many opportunities for funded research. And so I remember I spent like a good junior year, senior year getting rejected, just looking for places to like volunteer, not make any money, just learn. Because even though like I had pretty okay grades, they were like B plus, A minus, which I think in STEM a really good like grade to have. STEM is hard, and I think a lot of people beat themselves up about like I'm not like an A plus or an A or an A minus even. No, like it's like the difference between a B and an A in STEM is like you forgot like a negative sign somewhere in your text. And so like that always kind of drove me nuts. But my professors who I would approach, they'd be like, I had a couple, like 2 or 3 say, you have like a B in my class and I only take A's for my, or you have like a B plus, but I'm really thinking you should like study for your next test more. And then, that was like a logical reason that was given. And if that's how they think about it, then that's how they're going to run their lab. But it was interesting. It was an interesting thing. And so after I went through that, I ended up not getting any research experience in college, and instead wrote a paper on literature-based research for gene therapies for HIV. And I was in Seattle at the time, and one of the resources I kept citing in my paper was the Keem Lab, and they study gene therapies for HIV in Seattle. And I ended up going to that PI, and PI means like primary investigator in the lab. I ended up going to his lectures, like at different venues. I was like almost like a groupie, like following around or whatever. But no, it was just like I would show up and ask a bunch of really like high level questions that were not intended for the audience, because it was like getting the community involved in STEM. And I feel so bad because I was kind of hijacking it, and I was like, what about like this receptor? Have you thought about doing like this part of the genome? Because I'd studied it in school, and he remembered me because when I went up to him later, I was like, the second time I met him, I was like, can I wash dishes in your lab or just be there? And he's like, come intern, like come learn.
Wow.
So that was a huge thing, and it taught me a lot about the job process, about how you should go and put yourself out in the market, is be really personal, show that you're passionate, show up to things, be proactive, and it will work out for you, in my opinion. So I worked there for 2 years. Yeah. And I was like full-time research assistant, and the plan was to go to a PhD to apply for a program. But I actually never got to that point because I started a company instead. So here I am. That was like the longest story. So sorry.
No, it's fine. But so now you run STEMBox. So could you talk about how this idea came to you and what it's all about?
Right. So a lot of it stemmed from my entry into the field, like I just talked about. And there was a particular instance where somebody who I was interviewing with, I was told by another professor had space in his lab. And when I talked with him, he didn't want to look at any of my research, like any of the papers that I brought him or my resume. And instead just said, like, you're Hispanic, right? And I was like, yeah. I know another chica that can help another chica out. And I was totally caught off guard, and he just kind of sent me out of his office and basically played up the idea that, like, in doing this, he played up the idea that my minority is a crutch that can get me into a job just because I am that way, but I'm not good enough for him. So I went home, and I was so upset, and I was like crying, and I was like, how am I ever going to make it in the field if this is what people at the top think of me or treat me like? And after I got into my lab, I felt better, but I would still consider myself very vigilant. I don't like to say, like, it's paranoia. It's to keep track of, like, events that happen to you that don't happen to your coworkers that are male. I think that's just being vigilant. So I would go to my other lab members who were female and ask them about their experiences in STEM. Women who were, like, 10 years, 20 years my senior, see what they'd been through. And every single woman had a story. Some story of overt or casual or micro-sexism happening to them in research. And I'd ask men, and they'd be like, things are fine with women here. Like, there's nothing wrong. And so it's completely, like, unbeknownst to them, this pain and, like, inequality that's happening to their coworkers right next to them in the same space. And so with those two experiences, I ended up doing a talk at this event in Seattle that was like a 5-minute talk without like any notes, and I just shared the story. And I got so much feedback from people in the audience, men and women. And I was like, there's something I should be able to do to make this more actionable. Because like you, one of the things we talked about earlier was how you didn't see any STEM role models out there that you could find who were like just accessible in your everyday life. And I noticed the same thing for me. I was like, Bill Nye, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Carl Sagan, I love those guys. They are great, but like there's nobody who's like me who's doing something at the level that they're doing. And that's problematic, and I thought maybe I could fill that spot, but it would be more valuable to people if I had like, as of course, like also as a woman, you're like, I have to work 10 times harder to get myself like to a certain point. So instead of just being like a personality or like somebody who likes to talk about it, I was like, I need to have a product because this is something that A, will like financially support all of this work I'm doing, and B, like that physical product translates into an emotional response they would have with the STEM activities. So you're putting like something physical in their hands along with your message, which is why I thought I wanted to do a box. of STEM activities for girls because
That's
they're
awesome.
obviously like not getting the
Mhm.
ways that respect their intelligence. So glitter and makeup and perfume
Yeah.
are legitimate sources of science for some girls. Like, don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. The problem is that
Mhm.
there's nothing beyond that for other girls
Yeah.
because we're different. We all like different things, and we don't see that reflected in the toy aisle. So that was the goal of STEMBox, and then the idea for a subscription box came along because I couldn't decide on like just what kit to
Yeah.
make. There's so many, and we've done 20 to date. So
Wow.
when I started, like, I couldn't have imagined like picking one of the 20 that I've done and just like pushing that out to the world and expecting
Mhm.
everyone to like it because everything's so different and there's so many different jobs in every field that you go through and techniques. And so, yeah, the subscription model was the only way for me to really go.
Mhm.
And that's how I decided to start it. Yeah.
So you mentioned you had designed 20 boxes. Do you have a favorite box or maybe one that sparks like a really interesting memory that you've had?
Great question. Yeah, it's like it almost feels like when parents are asked to pick between their favorite children.
Yeah.
I don't really know if they have a favorite. I don't have any kids, so I can't speak to that. But it feels like that with these kits because every box I learn
Mhm.
with it, and there's things that I've done before that are reiterated in recreating a box, and things that I've never done that I'm learning from.
Yeah.
But with that said, yeah, I do have a favorite. It's I would definitely say it's our bacteria box for a couple of reasons. Number
Mhm.
one, because every time I say this is our bacteria box to adults, they freak out and they're
Yeah.
like there's E. coli in here, and it's like not yet. And then number two, because it's really closely related to the work that happened in our research lab,
Mhm.
and it's something that would build like a sense of belonging in girls who didn't necessarily feel comfortable in a space prior to this experience.
Yeah.
So I think like the more you get to do something, the more comfortable you feel with it down the road, even if you don't completely understand it the first time.
Mhm.
When you go up to microbiology in college and you're like, oh, I've worked with petri dishes and inoculation
Yeah.
loops and spreaders, I'm ready. And even that like base level of confidence will take you so much further in
Mhm.
your ability to learn. So I love like the tools that we have in that box, like the things I just labeled and named. And
Yeah.
we have Augur, so you get to work with Augur the first time. And the last reason I love it is because the result is so visible and tangible, and you get to
Mhm.
grow these colonies and you get to try different variables. So to me, like as a microbiologist, like I love that box.
Yeah.
And there's a cute little E. coli plushie in it from one of those giant microbes. And I love those. Any sort of accessory that I can put in front of a
Yeah.
girl that can take her out of an experiment and like follow her through her everyday life
Mhm.
is my favorite. Like, love it. I'm wearing my serotonin necklace and like things
Oh, I
like that
love
you can just
that.
like
Yeah.
keep for you and remember that you're a scientist when it's hard. Like, those make a huge difference.
Mhm.
So, anyways, yeah, that one.
So, do you have any advice for girls who are looking to enter the STEM field but maybe feel a little bit discouraged or don't really know all of the information that they feel that they might need or might not have had all of these advanced STEM courses in high school? So, what would you say to them to try to convince them that STEM is the right place for them?
So, first of all, as much as like it's incorrect and annoying for people to undervalue or underestimate girls, it is such a blessing to be underestimated
Mhm.
because it also makes you so like fired up to
Yeah.
prove people wrong. So like one of my favorite things is when people underestimate me because then I get to show them how wrong they are. So, like I think it's just like a common thing that women go through is being underestimated, and it's in many different fields.
Mhm.
So take that and turn it. Make it something that you're using to fuel yourself to do even better. And
Mhm.
it sucks, like it shouldn't have to be that way, but that's how it is. And so, as much as you think you don't belong somewhere, like that is completely incorrect. You
Yeah.
do because you say so. You get the final say so as to whether or not you belong somewhere. And science is hard work and
Mhm.
it will always be hard work. It's never not. But that's one of the awesome things about it is that as long as you're a hard worker and you're willing to put in the time and hours, you're going to be fine.
Yeah.
You don't have to be like the smartest person ever. You just have to be someone who's like persistent and works hard. So those would be like my two pieces, is to work hard and prove them wrong.
So I want to thank Kina for being with us today and talking about STEMBox and her experiences as a woman in STEM. And again, I'm Stemily K, your hostess to the world of STEM.